For more on these cyber concerns between the United States and China, I'm joined here in the studio by Allan Friedman. He's the research director at the Center of Technology Innovation at the Brookings Institute here in Washington. Welcome to the show. You know, I have to ask a real sort of basic question here because both sides do surveillance on everyone, let alone each other. I mean, this is a fact. We know that. Is it awkward that they both have to sit in a room and kind of look at each other, yet smile and say, how do these talks begin? What do they say to each other?
Well, I think that that's exactly part of it, is everyone says, listen, we acknowledge that you have a right for your national security and we have a right for our national security. And the priority now is for each country to identify what the priorities are where they feel that other countries may be overstepping their boundaries.
Best case scenario for these meetings. We've heard some sound bites earlier that things are progressing along in a very positive direction. So let's put on the positive hat here on the cyber issue. What's a positive outcome? What's the best case scenario?
I think a positive outcome is actually very ordinary. It's one of definitions. It's allowing the U.S. and China to agree on what's acceptable and what are activities that we should try to tamp down. The easiest way to start that is by talking about activities that neither are doing to find common points of cooperation. But as you work towards that, you want to find definitions that say, listen, we think this is over the line.
What would you consider the talks, you know, in a worst case scenario? Would it be just not acknowledging the definitions?
I think in the worst case is allowing people to talk past each other in such a way that everyone feels that they're not getting listened to. We use this term cyber attack. And I think for the United States, it's very important to convey a distinction between different types of cyber attacks. There is state espionage, which, as you point out, everyone does, everyone has done ever since we had information to write down. People were trying to figure out what was written down. The United States feels that we should distinguish that from competitive data theft, where the targets are private companies, and the use of that information is not strategic, but economically competitive.
Let me explain that for the viewer, because you're talking about sort of state secrets. Where are your missiles? Where are my missiles? Versus, I want to see how Apple builds their iPhone 5. The companies, is there a lot of pressure on the U.S. administration for them to get those talks going?
Well, the challenge from the U.S. industry perspective is no one wants to be the person to publicly say, listen, we're exploited. People are taking all of our secrets. And so industry has a tough position because one of the natural recourses of the administration is they say, well, if companies are being hit a lot, then we need more regulation. And the private sector has really pushed back against any attempt for government to step in and regulate. So they can't really push too hard on the administration for any particular strong course of action.
As you watch these talks now take place, give us a sense of what a realistic solution will be at the end of the talks. What's your prediction?
You know, for the end of this week, I think it really is just setting up the stage for definitions. And even we're not there yet. Just how are we going to define the debate? Who's going to be in the room? And what are we going to not talk about?
I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room here.
Sure.
Because this is partly related to Snowden as well. The Americans have their right to say what they want to say, but the Chinese, and it's not just the Chinese, it's governments from around the world going to say, hey, wait a minute. You're spying on this country, you're doing this. I mean, you're doing some of the same things that you're accusing other people of doing. I just want to get your take. I mean, how does the United States respond to that, or can they?
The thing to remember is, of course, despite what we see at the negotiating table, every country represents a number of different interests. And if you were to go into the American trade community, they're devastated that this has come out. Not because they're ashamed, but because they can't become good faith partners with anyone else. So the challenge is for the United States to understand what its limits are and really keep in mind how its actions will be perceived if it wants to be a partner in the global marketplace. Similarly, China has to sort of understand how its actions will be perceived.
Allan Friedman, I want to thank you for your analysis from the Brookings Institute. Thank you again. This story certainly will be following. There'll be much more to come, Mike.